because of like Whole30 and whatnot, I've been starting like cooking every morning and having my day start off with really good breakfast. And you and I were talking about this where you're not really a morning person, right? You don't really need food in the morning to have your day started, right? Is that you?
Right. Yeah. It was like, I guess I can say I'm a morning person now, not because I eat breakfast, because I don't really like to. I'm starting to do the green smoothie and everything, but I've trained myself to be a morning person. I'm more like evenings, but I realize I get more done in the morning.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so it was you. We were talking about that, and
Right,
I was thinking that. Yeah, I since doing the Whole30 diet, I started having my American breakfast, sweet potato hash browns in the morning with eggs and a side of meat, either a very, very well grass-fed sausage or bacon. And dude, it's awesome. It's a game changer. Like, I just wake up in the morning pumped because I'm like, I get bacon, and the day is good, dude. I'm excited. Oh. Well, hey, everybody. Oh, we're live. Hey, look at that. Hey, welcome back to the Circle of Knowledge podcast. I get lonely on this show. I get lonely on this podcast because when I don't have an interviewer or someone to interview, I bring on my best friends, and I bring on my best friends to talk and to discuss. And today joining us on the podcast is Mr. Willie Blake. And
what is up?
You guys have never ventured back into the archives of the Circle of Knowledge podcast. I'm bringing this up on my other screen here. If you've never ventured back into the archives of the Circle of Knowledge podcast, you will have missed out on an incredible episode where I actually interviewed Willie Blake shortly after we met. Do you remember that?
Oh, of course I remember it. It was like, I know it was like the first episode of season 2 or 3, like number 27. I don't know why it still sticks out. I think that was the first podcast I ever been on. And so I was just like super pumped to share what I knew. And you happened to be that guy. So of course I remember it.
I happened to be that guy. You were right. It was the first episode of season 3. And I was just introducing professional interviews as part of the new curriculum of the Circle of Knowledge. And you and I had discussed a book and a mentor who you were studying, and that book was Your One Word by Evan Carmichael. And at the time, we were studying that and talking about that, and I was like, this is a fascinating concept because your one word was like, what's your why, but in one word. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. Like, I just barely got Simon Sinek's concept of what's your why. Now Evan Carmichael is like, well, what's your word? And I'm like, like, right. My brain has just been blown. Like, let's go to the next level. Let's go there. Let's take it. So I love that. And I always want to bring that up and honor you, but I appreciate you jumping on here with me today. And anyone joining on the live feed is welcome to join me on the days when we don't have an actual interviewee or a speaker. But Willie is just an awesome person who I love masterminding with. I love working with Willie, and he's an exceptional professional and just transitioned out of college, just graduated from the good old undergrad.
Yeah, UVU,
Utah Valley University. Throw up your dude. I don't even know a representative, and I don't even know. I think it's this. You're right. It's something.
I did this. I made this up. I don't know if it's an actual thing, but then that works too.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I don't even know. Our school is notorious for having zero pride because we're smack in the center between two incredible universities that are hogging the press of Utah. But Utah Valley University to me was one of the greatest school opportunities to leverage my career and my professionalism just because of the connections and where it's placed. And what a great university. Anyways, we can talk about this all day, man. But I brought Willie on because I specifically. We've studied the Amplified Minds Manual for Success, which is the mindset of a successful seller, an ebook that we wrote here as a company. And in this book, on the first section, we're talking about the book Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. So if you're already sick of this book, don't worry. We've got 2 more parts we got to go about. But this is part 4 of part 6. And oh my gosh, I just realized something. Willie, I apologize for putting you into this, but Jason Curtis hey, by the way, Jason says, "What's up, John and Willie?" I'll bring him up on the screen. And
Jason.
I guess I should be very, very careful about this, but he says, "The morning is so much better with bacon." Yes, we agree. And then he says, "Having your why is so important to be successful." Yes, I agree. And then I'm going to bring this up briefly, just with everything in the news and what's going on. But we were just doing something, and I realized what we just did. So you read that comment?
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Okay, so I'm going to put that down for now. But thanks for bringing that to my attention, Jason. I appreciate that. With all respect, the reason why I continue to do these shows and the reason why we do all of this is because there's positiveness in the world. You know what's funny? Nothing's funny about what I'm about to say, but that's a bad phrase. Okay, let me retract. How do I say this? Willie, back me up, bro. So what's interesting about what's going on in the news today, with everyone knowing what happened in Minneapolis, and I just want to say that out of all the people causing the riots in the streets and those who have been caught and arrested, 95% of those caught and arrested aren't even from the town or state in which they rioted. That is a federal offense. These are rioters for hire, and they're creating absolute chaos. And so what you're seeing on the news might strike you as devastating, and it is. It's horrible. But just remember, 95% of the people being arrested for the riots and the tragedies that are happening around the country right now, 95% of the people being taken into custody aren't even living in the cities or the state. They're registered to different states in which the city that they're rioting in. So I just wanted to make that known. Huge, huge thing. Just take note, okay? I'm not going to take any political side on this. I just want people to know what's going on. So again, the media is making us go for a hellspin. So hey, Selling the Invisible with Harry Beckwith, and I've got my good friend. I'm pointing at him right now, Willie Blake, with me to discuss this concept in this book. So Willie, let's take it away, man. The 4th principle I wanted to go over. And one of the major key points of this book, Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith, a must-read and kind of the foundations of what we believe in sales. There's a couple things I want to argue at this point, because while the book says this, I argue against. But I want to argue it because I feel like you and I can have a really good mastermind discussion on this. Let me read it off to you, and we'll talk about this one by one, and then we're going to share some resources with everybody. By the way, on my computer screen, I just realized I cut it off, but I got a big new list of books over the weekend, and I'm just going to push that out of the camera because that's kind of distracting. But anywho, the first principle I want to talk to, ADHD brain, Willie, keep me on track here. Selling is definitely a popularity contest, period. Let's stop there. Boom. What are our thoughts on that? Is selling a popularity contest? Do we agree with that? Is that something we want to promote? Like, this is from a book, a bestseller, a national bestseller, Selling the Invisible, Harry Beckwith. Do we agree with that? Selling is definitely a popularity contest. Agree to disagree, Willie Blake.
Yeah. So the first, I used to be hugely against this, thinking that it's a popularity contest. But then as I gotten more and more into it, yeah, I believe it is. And you kind of got to think about the popularity, like what that word actually means. Like, being popular is being known. Being popular is being recognized by other people and hopefully respected, right? And so when you're going out and you're selling something, when you're going out and trying to be every single place, you got to be popular. You got to have people know you, because if you're going to make sales, if you're going to actually make some money selling the product that you're so passionate about that it's a disservice if people don't have it, then of course they have to know you, and of course they have to respect you. That's just how it is. And I remember one guy, I think it's the mentor of Grant Cardone. One time he said, and Grant Cardone posted this, he said to Grant that what he needs to do is to become more popular. And Grant was like, that's the biggest bull I have ever heard. And his coach went into saying, you want to know what? You got to be popular, because if you want to be famous, and Grant Cardone's not even into being famous, but if you want to be famous and popular, you got to be known. Like that's why he brought the jets, so he can go to clients in different states and countries. Like that's why he is trying to be omnipresent, which is basically being in so many places at once to where people are recognizing him here and there. And so that while he's just being himself, like he's able to sell what he wants to. And when it comes to selling the invisible, like it's perfect to it. Like you're in one place, but you got to make yourself be in multiple places. And so that's when the invisible comes in. It's like you're one, everyone else is invisible, but you got to sell it somehow. So social media, everything else. So yeah, it is a popularity game. Those are my thoughts. What about you, John?
Dude, I love it. I was going to swing over the mic here and pass it on over to me here. I agree, man. I think it's interesting. And though we could argue, right, success doesn't argue outcomes. Success breeds systems and processes that actually show you how things were plausible, right? And in that example you gave with Grant Cardone and his mentor or whatever, that's an interesting piece, because in a lot of ways people will say in like I would say car dealerships and a couple other sales companies, door-to-door, summer sales, those types of companies, they rely on the numbers game. The more houses we can knock on, the more customers we can bring in, the more popular the products get in front of the eyes of potential customers, the more likelihood of us selling will happen. And that's the wrong way to think, in my opinion. But at the same time, it is, and I want to argue that it is a popularity contest, because it is something that if you have the world's greatest product, let's take your example, Willie. If you want to be famous, okay, that's your product, that's your thing. You want to be famous. Sitting in your living room being famous is not it's not the greatest gig, but being everywhere, being at the most, iconic events, being, somewhere that attracts people, that's what it is. And I think this principle of attraction marketing kind of ties into it, because you want to be, and I'm going to sing here for a minute, where the Little Mermaid says, I want to be where the people are, right? Right. You got to go where the people go to embody this principle. So it's a fascinating principle. I think with context, yeah, I would also disagree, because I don't believe that being popular makes you the best. Being popular gets you more sales by positioning it in front of people playing that stupid numbers game. But at the same time, quality is always going to breed more success. But you got to get at least one person in the door to sell before you can get another person in the door. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think there's another thing that you said that I don't want to graze over at all, which is basically you don't want to be famous for sitting on the couch. You want to be famous for something great or something that you love to do. Like how many, you could probably think of a friend who you can think of is famous for staying on the couch or working 40 hours, and then when he goes home, just chills and watches football.
Right.
Like we're all famous for something. With our friends, with our family, but it's what do you want to be famous for? That's where you really got to hone it in. Like that's why clarity and finding your why and being able to figure out that path, that's why it's so crucial. Because right now you're famous for everything you're doing in your life. All good habits, all bad habits, addictions, all fears, as well as all successes and awards that you've gotten. Like that's you in its entirety. But if you want to be more, if you want to actually go and be famous for something great, like motivational speaking, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, if you want to go into sales, Grant Cardone, YouTubers, you got, well, I know Fortnite got Ninja, YouTubers, Evan Carmichael, Mr. Beast, right? Like, what do you want to be famous for? And then once you know that question, then you can go out, excuse me, you can go out and start actually changing your habits, changing your character, start changing the values and the stuff that gets you to where you want to go.
Yeah, I love that and agree with it. And I want to kind of piggyback off of that and go to the next principle, which is, get yourself everywhere. you've got to be where that is. And then moving on to the next principle, which is kind of a suggestion. And in the book, he talks a little bit about this as he talks about how you need to get to know your customer, how you need to know your customer very, very well. And obviously, yeah, anyone who gets into marketing knows that, but knowing your customers. One of the things I love about Grant Cardone is he talks about obsessions, right? And you need to be obsessed with customer relations. You need to be obsessed with the process of getting customers. And one of the best processes of getting customers is taking care of them, knowing what they want, knowing what they need. I wanted to touch on this principle. First, go to where the people are. Let's talk about that, and then let's talk about what your people need. Where do you find people? Where do you find people? Like, where's a great place to find people that you can have conversations with?
Not on your couch. Like some great places, like networking events. I know Amplified Minds has done several of those. You can just go on like Eventbrite, type in where you're at, and there'll be tens and hundreds of different events that people are going to. Obviously, right now you got the virus going around, and it's not like green. I don't know if that's what they call it now. Like the field is green, being able to go out and do whatever. Like there's still limitations, but there's still a bunch of virtual events. Like I've been a part of a bunch of virtual events. Right now, we're on a live on a podcast. Like This is something where we're being able to reach people. There's a bunch of different places you can go. Just look for people. I guess more specifically, social media is always good too. That's something you can do from your couch. Because on LinkedIn, you can search up phrases like motivational speakers. If you're one, you can type in engineers, accountants, whatever your job field is or whatever you want to be, type those in, see the profiles of other people doing the same thing, and go and connect with them. Or on Facebook, go on Facebook, connect with your friends that you have and haven't connected with forever. They're just sitting as a number on your Facebook feed. Like, forget about that. Why don't you actually go and contact them to see how they're doing? That's a way to connect. Just, I don't know. It's simple to me when you say go where the people are. Go where the people are. Go where there's people. Don't go where there's not people. And even to add on to that, just a little quick thing, go where people talk to you. Go into the grocery store, unless you're the one to initiate the conversation for everyone, no one's going to talk to you. Except maybe the cashier. Yeah. Or if you steal something, then an employee will talk to you. Hopefully. But like, go where the people are, go figure out where they're going to help initiate the conversation or where you're going to have a good conversation about it. Friends, church meetings, again, social media, events, virtual events. There's a bunch of different places. You just got to be creative with it. Go find people.
I love that. I want to share two examples. The first one is in one of our Amplified Minds masterminds. We had a gentleman who came to us and said he needed to raise $20,000 in just a couple of weeks for a construction project. And we told him, well, where are your investors? And he said, well, they're typically hanging out with rich folk. We said, well, where are the rich folk? And they said, well, the guys I want to work with are typically hanging out at the country club, getting sodas, eating breakfast or brunch at the club. These particular individuals. And we said, okay, so why don't you go there? He's like, well, I don't have a country club membership. It says, do you need one to walk into the door? Like, you don't have to go golfing. You just got to sit in the same room as these people. So he goes in and he sits at these tables and he starts eavesdropping on a bunch of just random conversations. And he gets up and he friendly introduces himself and starts having conversations, sits down, ends up eating brunch with some guys, and bada bing, bada boom, he finds himself the 20 grand he needs to raise money for this construction project. And it was like, go where the people are. Like, so simple. If you know that you need people with wealth, go to where you find people with wealth. If you need a brainstorm session on that, give me a call. Willie and I will call you and we'll have a session on that. But I think it's a huge example. Oh no, what was my second example? I had it in my brain and it just slipped my mind. But anywho, I think you're absolutely right. just thinking about where people are. I'll bring up another idea. For example, I'm looking at my live feed, and I've got my friends, people who I'm connected with on social media who are watching this. Shout out to Sage Page, James P. Frill, and Blake Tony Griffiths. Shout out to you guys. But I wanted to say that Facebook has a new feature called Rooms. And so not only is there a place to go, but you can create the place to go. And I think that's really, really creative. That's what Amplified Minds has always been about, is instead of just going to other events and, promoting ourselves and endorsing ourselves, is be the place where people like to go. And we've always created events that were networking and fun and enjoyable and so forth. So we did that. But I just think that's powerful, super powerful, Willie. I think we all need to find where our people are. And so like Jason Curtis said here in the comment section, he says, know your customer's avatar. Yep. Which is a jargonistic marketing statement for know who your customers are. Just know what they look like, who they are, their psychographics, their demographics, and so forth. So I love that. That's a great comment. I'd like to move on because I want to get into the topic of once you find them and get to those people, you meet with them. And in those conversations, you want to know how, most importantly, find ways to provide value, which is by understanding what it is that they want, they need, and they love. We've got a bunch of suggestions here that I'd like to run through as a list. But when you find these people, or these people find you, add value by knowing exactly what they want and what they need, what they're looking for, and so forth. In the example I gave earlier, where our good friend and part of our mastermind needed $20K, and he went to the place, he didn't just like sit down at the brunch table and start pitching these guys on a 20 grand thing. He sat down, he got to know them, and they started sharing about some of his stuff. And it just made sense for the guys he was talking to, and it bada bing bada boom, it worked out. But like, I just think that's fascinating because a lot of people miss that. They think that everything is a sales pitch, and it's not. You need to listen. Ken Garff, I'm not the biggest fan of Ken Garff auto sales, but their slogan is renowned. And they have the "We Hear You" slogan, right? Their slogan, their campaigns are renowned, and they always talk about how we hear you, because we all know car salesmen don't hear us, they don't listen to us at all. But at the same time, that's kind of like their slogan and their deal, and it's a great point. So Willie, not to get too off topic here, but let's talk a little bit about how we can help people. How do we meet their needs? What are some things that we can recommend to people once we learn what their interests are, what they need, what they like, what they love? What are some things that we feel like would be really, really good resources for people when learning about them and what they need?
So, like, are you asking like what kind of things would work to help get people on your page and get the sale and the resources? I don't know if I understand the question.
Yeah, how do we serve people? What's the kind of value? Once you learned a little bit about the person in front of you, how do you serve them? What are some great things that help you, that lengthen, that strengthen your relationship with other people?
Okay, yeah, for sure. The two things that instantly come to my mind, you got to listen and you got to ask questions. And not like questions like, "Hey, how you doing, John?" Or what's your major in college? Like those are surface level questions. We don't ask those. We're deep level. We go deep diving. The kind of questions we want to ask is, what are you passionate about? Like, what's your goal? If you had no limitations on money, resources, like what would you do? What would your dream day be like? And instead of the how are you, just be like, so what's an interesting thing that you've done today? This last week, what's something new that's piqued your interest? Like something that's more complicated, more than just I'm good, or business management or accounting, right? If you're a college student, I don't know how many college students are on here. I just recently graduated, so it relates to me. And I'm sure everyone else can relate to the question aspect. But I hear all the time people asking, so what's your major? And I'm just like business management and marketing. And then it ends there. But what I absolutely love is taking that question and just be like, so what are you passionate about? Oh, I'm passionate about going out and helping others. I want to start my own nonprofit. And I ask them, like, that's awesome. Like, are you doing work in that realm? They're like, well, yeah, I'm working on a little side hustle while I work at Walmart for my business. And I'm like, that's awesome. Are you majoring in like whatever you're doing? They're like, oh no, I'm majoring in something else irrelevant. And so just by doing that, you're able to help them realize the path that they're going down. But even if it's not that, you're still able to ask the deep questions. And people remember the people who don't ask the same questions over and over again. Another example, my friend Ian, when I first talked with him, we had a one-on-one thing. And I'm just like, what are you passionate about? And it's just a simple question for me. I like asking it because it gets down to more to their core. And Ian told me what he's passionate about. We have a 30-minute conversation. 2 months later, he comes back to me and says, Willie, since our first conversation, like that question, what are you passionate about? Like I haven't stopped thinking about that. And I'm like, what an amazing thing about how to ask questions. And so wrapping that all back around to like how to help people out after you get to know them and after you become their friend, keep asking questions and then listen to them. Because if you want to make a sale and if you want to close, you got to be able to know what their pain points are. You got to be able to know what their challenge and needs are. And the only way you're going to do that is asking good questions and then zipping your lip, shutting up, and listen to what they say instead of thinking about what you're going to say next. There's so many people out there. I don't know why I'm just like not moving around. Like there's so many people out there who don't do that. They just simply say, so what do you want in a car? Like we'll go back to car selling since that's the examples we keep bringing up. Yeah, we'll talk like a car salesman. It's like, so what do you want in a car? And the customer starts saying what he wants or she. And then the salesman's just like, okay, and what's your budget for the car? And asks all these questions. And then afterwards just goes out and shows them like a Ferrari or some high-end price thing that they can lease to when their budget was like super low and they're looking for a family van to support their 5 kids, right? The salesman wasn't listening. And you know how much, how much smack down on their credibility happened then?
Yeah.
Like it's like anything you build. It takes years to build something, but minutes to destroy it. If you don't master the power of listening, then you're just setting yourself up to be destroyed in a couple minutes, because that's what brings credibility. But if you can master listening and just ask questions based off of what they say, oh my goodness, you're going to have credibility out the wazoo. You're going to be able to actually go out and just be yourself. How awesome would that be? Just be yourself and you talk to people and they want to buy what you're passionate about. They want to buy your product or service. That would be the coolest thing in the world. You do it through listening. You do it through asking the powerful questions, because those two things, like in my opinion, in my experience, that's what brings the seller to the successful seller. And it's just that simple. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
I love it. I think there's I'm getting a little bit of feedback on your end, so I'm gonna I'll mute you for a second, but then I'll unmute you when I'm ready. I'm not sure why there's a little bit of feedback, but I love that because, well, a few things. I get super passionate about it too. And it's like you said, why aren't I like running around about this? Because this is a really important piece and a huge concept to me. I think here's the thought. I think when people go to have a sale or sell, they get it in their minds and then they turn into these robots. And when they turn into these robots, it all of a sudden becomes a pitch and there's a script and there's just like, well, like they do the normal thing about selling. But when you know what somebody needs and wants, a recommendation or just a referral is so powerful. I have bad breath. Here, you should try this Minto. Not only will it make your breath fresh, but man, like people will want to be around you because it fills the whole room with mint. And you're like, okay, I'm sold. Like it's so easy to just address people's concerns and what they need by being a human instead of selling them what they don't want. You brought up the car example, and I was just thinking about a few examples, but I just really wanted to hit that home because I think that's so true. So far, let's take a quick review. My brain's all over the place right now, and I wanted to just kind of take a minute and say, selling is a popularity contest, and you need to get yourself everywhere. I'd say the second principle is you go places, go where the people are, right? And you go to networking events, which are free. Find people online. They're great places. I had an example of a guy who ran up to me at the grocery store, and he started pitching me on this MLM and this really, really like big, new, awesome thing. And I was like, dude, this is not the place to like sell me. Like, I'm focused on getting my groceries and getting out. And he was so like, that was his style, like his tactic. Like, I'm going to meet people, be super friendly at the grocery store while we're picking up our pickles. And it's like, dude, I don't know if that's like the thing to do. It was very, very interesting. It was an interesting approach that I observed. So, but you do want to go where the people are for your interest, for your group, your avatar, as Jason said in the comment section. And then we talked about, asking the right questions, which you highlighted and did so well describing, Willie. When you ask the right questions that lead to, things that change people that know that you're curious. One of the worst ways to ask somebody, about them is tell me about yourself, or what do you do for a living? Like none of those questions actually get to what we want. And I remember reading a book, spacing my mind. But there was a book basically about the question behind the question and the psychology of why I would ask that question. And I'm feeling lonely, so I'm going to unmute your mic just so that I know that you can jump in whenever you want. But the question behind the question is because we're not asking the question we really want. We think that a question will lead to more questions, which will lead to the outcome, but there's truth behind every question. And the question we most want to consider is the question that is going to tell us what their needs are. And then that's how we're able to help people. And I just think that's so important. And we're at Amplified Minds and the Champion Circle and all the things that we do under our roof. We help people connect, we help people build relationships, and we also position people as absolute authorities in their space. And because of that, we've got to know what people want, what people do, and what they need. And in order to achieve and to help them, we've got to help them in high-level ways. So on the topic of, being valuable, to provide value and share value with other people. Now, one of our mentors, he thinks providing value as a general blanket statement is a waste of time. And I agree with him. And I think providing value is a waste of time, because value as a blanket statement is an absolute waste of time when there's no vision or outcome, right? But when you provide value in a way that leads to the deepening of the relationship, the creation of a friendship or some sort of networking opportunity, you definitely want to provide value in intellectual ways, such as, recommending books, articles, podcasts, blogs they might like intellectual thinking attracts other intellectual types. And so I kind of wanted to take a moment here and just say, with all that we teach, with all that we do, with Amplified Minds and the Circle of Knowledge podcast, I think it'd be fun to just recommend a few books, a few articles, a few podcasts, a few blogs ourselves, so that we can kind of challenge our listeners to take action on the information and the golden nuggets of knowledge they received today. So in your mind, Willie, what are some books you would highly recommend to our listeners?
Oh, goodness. Where to start?
I know.
Yeah, those who don't know, I read 50 plus more. I read more than 50 books a year. Well, I don't know why I just don't say it that simple. I read more than 50 books a year. I absolutely love it. Started from one book in 2017 to moving up to 50 plus books a year. And I'm a dyslexic, and so it's really hard, but it just helps me grow and move. And some of my favorite books, Be Obsessed or Be Average by Grant Cardone. If you're looking for like knowing how to make your obsession with whatever it may be, it can be with your job, it could be with Pokemon, it could be even addiction to like drugs or pornography. Whatever your like obsession is, that book tells you like it's okay to be obsessed. You need to be obsessed to be the 1% of people. And it teaches you how to do that. So that's one book. Another of my favorite books, you have it in your pile, Leadership and Self-Deception. Like that book, oh my goodness. If you have not picked up that book, you need to pick up that book or order it or do something or another and get that book today, because that will make every single relationship in your life and the ones to come absolutely phenomenal, like without a doubt. It talks about not being inside the box. And I'm not going to say anything more because you need to pick up that book. You need to read it.
That is a good book. I'll interject here, and I'll kind of take the hard part of this question. And I'll recommend some articles, some places to find articles. I have found that magazines have been more of an impressive source of article information than online Googles and blogs, though there are some blogs that I prefer and I enjoy. But I would definitely recommend reading anything from The Economist. I have found that The Economist is non-biased in their opinions, though they're owned by a political genre that will not mention. They're very, very unbiased, and they also have worldwide information. And when you have worldwide information, it's hard to construe facts that are coming from the UK. It's hard to construe facts that are coming from Australia. And that's why I like The Economist. It's a great resource for absolute incredible articles and so forth. I enjoy Fortune magazine. Forbes is like the one everyone loves. And I think Forbes is great because you can go on Forbes and get online content from Forbes. But you guys got to know who contributes to Forbes to know where the information is coming from. And so I would actually prefer Fortune magazine over Forbes because because I know where the content comes from, and the content usually typically picks a economic background that relates to a lot of businesses. I can point at any one of my Forbes magazines, my Fortune magazines, and just pick up a random article, and I could use that article in discussion in relation to pretty much everyone I meet, which you can't do with many magazines because of the niche, because of the entrepreneurial captions and so forth. And that's why I like Fortune, because they're very non-biased. But maybe you're looking for a bias, so go get Forbes or go get Success Profiles or go get a magazine that essentially fits your niche. But I would highly recommend those two as articles. What are some podcasts you would recommend, Willie Blake? Light?
I've been called either. Obviously, I think one of the best ones is The Circle of Knowledge, no doubt.
Woo!
You just bring in a bunch of different insights as well as experts to just talk about a bunch of stuff. I absolutely love it. 3 others I can think of, On Purpose with Jay Shetty. If you want to learn about meditation and being calm and being able to apply that, that's a good place to go. Also learn about your purpose. Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, I think it's called Gary V Audio Experience.
Yeah.
That's a great one as well. Those who know Gary Vaynerchuk, he just spits fire with whatever he says, and it's just so good to hear his perspective all the time. I follow him on every single platform I'm on. And the other one, the Tony Robbins Show, it's awesome. I love that one as well. Just Tony Robbins talking about what he wants. And if you want something fun, I think it's called The Office Sisters, the Pamela and Angela from The Office. They basically go into like behind the scenes and whatnot. So if you want something fun, that's also a fun one to go to.
I love the fun recommendations. I'll throw in a couple more. I just started listening to Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income, and I love it. He's already got 450 or 420 episodes. Pat Flynn's on fire. If you want to know that kind of stuff, that's a good one. I recently started listening to, let's see here. Formula to Grow by Grant Cardone. The Side Hustle Show, I thought that one was entertaining. Entrepreneurs on Fire, that's a fun one. I just recently started listening to the Brendan Burchard Show. I'm just a big fan of Brendan Burchard. I think he's awesome. And then to get into the fun stuff as well. Well, okay, first of all, I can't go without saying Ken Coleman. Ken Coleman's awesome. The Ken Coleman Show is fantastic. One of my favorite shows. The guy just has his methodologies, and it's amazing. He's part of the Dave Ramsey personalities. But what I would suggest, if you want a good, whimsical, but fun, like entertaining and educational, there's one called Myths and Legends. And that, to me, like, anyone can relate, because there are stories and things in modern day culture that derive from myths and legends, and he debunks and buffs those myths by taking all the stories and mixing them into one funny comical story. And it's awesome. The Night of the Round Table was one of the most messed up scenarios, and one of the weirdest combinations. But Sir Lancelot is not the hero in every story. There's other stuff too. So that's what I would suggest. And then last, man, do you have any blogs that you enjoy? Any blogs that you think are worth telling people?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't read blogs.
Cool, no worries. I will share the Amplified Minds blog. No, we haven't written in that thing in forever. We need to for SEO, but I will tell you my most recent obsession in blogs and learning has been in the cannabis industry. Now, I will be blatantly clear with everybody on the show, and I don't mind sharing just because I have a value system that I believe and that I stick to. But I definitely am supportive and know the benefit of medical cannabis in a lot of people. And I've been reading quite a few blogs on the medical cannabis side. In fact, one of the books that I just am finishing up right now is Medical Cannabis Handbook. Just a fascinating read, because hemp products are just a fascinating thing, and people should know that there's more than that. There's more to smoking marijuana in hemp. Like, there are products that can build buildings. Most of your clothes can be made out of hemp. Pretty much anything can be made out of it. It's an amazing plant. And so I've just been very, very interested in that. And then the CBD side is also kind of a very, very cool thing to listen to. So I've been reading a lot on that, but that's just been some very, very interesting stuff. And I think people find a lot of business opportunities in that too. But so there we go. There's some recommendations for us. See how easy that was, just to share how much fun, what we're learning and why that applies and what's going on and so forth. I think I think there's some really cool stuff coming out of that. So I just wanted to share some of those. And I think it'd be fun for us to apply what Harry Beckwith was saying in Selling the Invisible when it comes to learning and getting to know people and listening. And we talked about that principle, but also let's share our own. Let's share some things that are very, very, very important. So I love it. I love it. Any other thoughts and additional things you want to end with?
Yeah. One thing, like, people just need, and myself included, because I'm not perfect at this either, but we just got to live in more truth. Like, we lie to ourselves a lot.
Oh yeah.
Like, an example, like, I'm overweight. I absolutely know I'm overweight. And I remember last year I was sitting there so depressed about it. I'm like, you want to know what? I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to exercise every single day. I'm going to have health drinks. I'm going to cut out sugar and all the junk food. It's going to be great. And then a couple hours later, I'm just like, okay, well, I did 25 push-ups, so I guess it's okay for me to have this donut. And then I started making excuses, and I started justifying things. And the word excuses and justifying, that's basically just the cupcake version of lying. Like, we're lying to ourselves. We need to live in more truth. Like, if we start being honest to ourselves, then we can be honest to the customers and clients that we have. Like, when it comes to listening and questions, the core of it is being able to listen and ask questions to ourselves. John, you gave some perfect examples when you ask questions to yourself. You got to ask, what's your, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. Basically, what's your why? What's your reason for doing this? when it comes to going out and talking with people. I know you're great at this, Jon, at events. You talk to them and you're just like, you're listening, you're engaged, you're laughing, you're 100% yourself while you go out, and people see that. That's why they love to be with you. That's why they love to work with you. But first you got to figure out who you are.
That's right.
Period. Like, if you don't know who you are, how the heck are you able to tell people your strengths and being able to tell people how you overcome your weaknesses? Like, there's absolutely no way in doing that. Exactly. Like, excuses are the cupcake. I love using that now in that phrase. Thanks for the comment, Jason. You're awesome, by the way. Just saying to everyone, Jason's awesome. But yeah, like, everyone's using the cupcake versions of everything. We need to get to the muffin. We need to get into the real healthy, raw side of things. And once we do that, and that's what I'll just like sum up as, next to questions and listening, if you didn't hear about that, jump back about 10 or 15 minutes. But you just got to figure out who you are. And that's just the downright nitty gritty of it. Because if you want to connect and lead with people, if you want to have daily movement, if you want to have a life of powerful movement and motivation to be able to actually produce light in your life, to be able to go out and actually get things done and to not make excuses or to justify, if you want that, you got to start with yourself. Like, if your personal life isn't up to par, how in the heck can your business or your family or your church or any relationships and connections otherwise, how in the world can they be together? And so, like, I've jumped off social media for 30 days. For the last 2 years, I've posted every single day, and I jumped off because there was no strategicness in it. I didn't have a plan of where I was going, and I needed to find out who I was and what I wanted before I could start sharing that more with other people. And that's just me. That's just what I did. But there's power when we know who we are. Because when we start walking against the wind of temptation, walking up against the storm of resistance, like, when that happens, you'll figure out that if you know who you are, you'll be able to get through it. But if you're not, you're just going to be lying on the ground the whole time. Or worse, you'll say, I give up, and turn the other way. Like, those are my thoughts. Find more clarity and then listen and ask questions. Be a friend. Be a friend to yourself. Be a friend to others. That's the key in any successful seller.
I love it. I love it. I love giving you the platform too to speak pure gold, knowledge, truth, and also to challenge our listeners to quit lying to themselves and to start getting to the brand muffin of it all. I love that.
Brand muffin.
The brand. Yeah, with raisins, of course. But just get to the meat of it, man. And I love it. So with that, I want to thank Willie for being on the show with me today, for accompanying me and my ADHD brain and allowing us to share some knowledge. And obviously, knowledge is worthless unless you take action on what you receive. And so we take very, very seriously the challenge part of this aspect of this show. And so we hope that you guys will enjoy this segment. You'll enjoy the recommendations. Look, we've got two more principles. No, sorry. We've got two principles. We do have two more principles. Two principles left in this book that we're going to be covering over the next week or so. And so please stay tuned and know that we got some really fun things coming up in the works. But one of my favorite things to just end the show on is to honor the people who've come on. And so for those of you who've been on the show before, for those of you who continue to watch, those of you watching live right now or listening on the playback, just know that you are special, you're amazing, you're awesome, and that it's not hard to find that. It's not hard to see that either. And so just remember that. And then especially with what's going on in the world today, remember that your awesomeness needs to shine above all the not awesomeness. And that's just a quick message I'd like to share. And so, Willie, thanks for joining me on the show today. Thanks for being an awesome pal. And we meant to go only 25 minutes, but it's been 2 hours. So I love it. But I appreciate you. And I can't wait to have this one in the books, and we'll have another one where you can get on soon. But we would I just appreciate the value and the light that you shared with us today.
Thanks, brother. Love you. You're the leader of awesomeness, so keep it up.
Hey, and I only surround myself with people who will follow awesomeness. There you go. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. This has been another episode of the Circle of Knowledge podcast. Ending